Next we have Fatal Fury, King of Fighters. I was first introduced to the SNK fighting universe through Capcom vs SNK 2 on the GameCube, then properly through King of Fighters Maximum Impact, and then even more properly through the King of Fighters 11. This was my first time playing this game though. I've owned the Fatal Fury Battle Archives Volume 1 on PS2 since 2011, so I decided on recording this game to finally be the time I try it out. But the TV I was using originally just would not display the game. That's not an issue anymore, so instead I downloaded the Arcade Archives version on Switch. Probably for the best too, I find the Switch's control stick easier for pulling off command inputs than the PS2's. First thing I'll say before we start is that this was designed by one of the men who designed the original Street Fighter, Takashi Nishiyama. Thankfully this game is a big improvement over that one. The game takes place in the city Southtown, which is also where most of SNK's later Art of Fighting and King of Fighters series take place. The story follows Terry Bogard and his adopted brother Andy. 10 years ago the crime boss Geese Howard murdered their adopted father Jeff. Having gone their separate ways to spend the next decade training, they, along with their friend Joe Higashi, are entering the King of Fighters tournament, which is sponsored by Geese, to get their revenge. The game uses 3 buttons: punch, kick and throw. Special attacks are standard for 2D fighters, quarter circle and a button, charge moves, or one direction then press another followed by an attack, and some way you press one direction followed by the opposite and an attack button. The game will actually give you the inputs between matches. The big thing that separated Fatal Fury from the other games trying to dethrone Street Fighter 2 was flying on 2 planes. Most stages had 2 rows and the character can get knocked onto the other row. You then have the choice to wait for the opponent to come to you, roll back to the other plane, or jump across with an attack of your own. The latter is 90% of the time the best option because you've got a good chance of connecting with it. There are some stages that have only 1 row where you'll just be bounced back by the audience. Thankfully you can't be hit during this, but sadly it means you can't get a free hit in yourself. Another cool thing this game has is a 2-on-1 mode in the multiplayer. If a second player joins in the middle of a fight, the 2 of you will gang upon the opponent. After they're defeated, the 2 players will then fight and the winner will move on to the next opponent. The game's quite fast paced for an early 90s Street Fighter competitor and quite fun, if still a bit clunky. The AI is a pain at times but not too horrible, and it just feels good when you hit someone. My biggest complaint though is that some of the special moves are quite inconsistent. A lot of my quarter circles just didn't register. I actually had the easiest time with Andy's charge moves, which is strange for me because I've always had a hard time with charge characters. So let's talk about our characters, starting with our 3 playable ones. Yep, another fighting game where most of the cast can't be played as, with 8 unplayable opponents. It's not as bad as with Street Fighter, at least all 3 look and play differently. Some console ports made most of the opponents playable, but I don't have any of them so we'll just have to get to them another time. But anyway, Terry Bogard, the legendary Hungry Wolf, the main character of the series and basically SNK's fighting game mascot. He and Andy were orphans living on the street until Jeff Bogard took them in. He saw Jeff's murder at Geese's hands when he was just 10 years old, and he and Andy spent the next 10 years training for their revenge. The 2 parted ways to this though. Terry wandered America for his training, learning from Jeff's mentor Tung Fu Roo and picking up other skills on the streets. His special moves include his iconic Burning Knuckle, quarter circle back punch, and Power Wave, quarter circle forward punch. This first version of the Power Wave is kinda useless though. As I said, quarter circle motions don't work that often, and when it does, this move comes out so slow you'll most likely get hit before it does. It's nice when it hits, but most of the time it won't. There's also his Crack Shoot, quarter circle back kick, and Rising Tackle, charge down up and punch, which have their uses if you pull them off, but sometimes that Crack Shoot just won't connect and it's easily punched out of. I like Terry. He stands out from the other protagonists of Street Fighter competitors who all wanted to be you, despite the complaints of Hack Ken from bitter Super Smash Bros fans who will take characters they're unfamiliar with as a personal insult. Actually I should talk about that. When I was recording this game, Super Smash Bros Ultimate only had that initial inkling teaser. It never crossed my mind while recording that he'd be in with a chance. He was in my would be cool but it never happened list. For a while I had a part of this script in my head talking about how Terry just got revealed and how excited I am to try him out and see him fit in with the rest of the cast. But then I take far too long to make these videos. Hell, it probably would have done the channel some good if I got this one out just as Terry was being released. Yeah. Spoiler for when I get to Ultimate in 25 years. Of the 4 Fighter Pass characters that have been released, Terry was not my most wanted. He is, however, the one I find the most fun to play as. While I'm at it, I'm writing this sentence at 10:15 at night on the 15th of January. I'm just under 16 hours away from the reveal of the last character of the Fighter Pass. For a laugh, I'll date this episode and not go back and rewrite this, even though there's a good chance the audio you're listening to will be recorded after the reveal. Just gonna break script here and say that actually no, the reveal hasn't happened yet, it's still midnight. No, I didn't rush this whole script in like less than 2 hours. This was one of the few games I managed to write a review for originally and I'd actually kinda liked that one so I could repurpose most of the script. Next is Andy, Terry's younger brother. When he and Terry parted ways, Andy moved to Japan and trained under Hanzo Shiranui. That surname will become more relevant in the next game. While I have played a couple games Andy has been in, I didn't play them for long, so this is the first time I've actually played as him at all. And he left a good first impression since I had the easiest time beating the game as him. I've always had trouble with charge inputs in fighting games, I just can't get them to work half the time. But Andy's Zanniaken was so useful for me, it came out quick and did a lot of damage. Yeah, he has other moves like the Hishoken, quarter circle forward punch, the Shoryudan, charge down up punch, and the Kuhadan, charge down back up forward kick, but the Zanniaken was the only one that mattered. As a character though, I've never cared much for Andy, which is why I'm only just playing as him. His design just never grabbed me and he's just not as memorable as his brother. Finally there's Joe Higashi, a Muay Thai champion out to prove himself in the tournament. He's the one who informed the Bogards that Geese is hosting the tournament, which led to him becoming good friends with the brothers. I have a bit of a grudge against Joe. As I said earlier, my first exposure to SNK characters was through Capcom vs SNK 2, and Joe was always the arsehole who would give me trouble or end my survival runs. So I never picked him in the other games he was in, but this was like 14 years ago, so whatever. His most useful move is his Tiger Kick, charge down back up forward kick, which deals huge damage and comes out fast. He's also got his other famous move, the Hurricane Upper, half circle forward punch. Now I've already said that quarter circle motions are hard to pull off, so you can imagine how often I managed to get half circle to work. It wasn't often. There's also his TNT punch by repeatedly tapping the punch button, which I never managed to make happen once. And finally, his slash kick, quarter circle back kick. Also his jump kick is just a knee, which has terrible range for such an important attack. Joe's fine, but he's the character I enjoyed playing as the least. When we first start the game we have a choice of 4 opponents. I'll start with Richard Meyer. He's a capoeira master and owner of the Pow Pow Cafe, which is his stage. He's just in the tournament to promote his nightclub. Apparently he doesn't tolerate fights in his club, but here he is fighting you inside his club. Being a capoeira master, he's very acrobatic. He can also grab onto the ceiling and kick you from there. I guess no one cared for Richard back in the day, since he's made one more appearance as a fighter after this game, and that was 15 years later, although he has had a lot of cameos. He just had his theme get a remix in Smash Ultimate, which is something. He may have been the first capoeira fighter in fighting games, but he's long since been overshadowed by characters that were just executed better. Next we'll look at Michael Max, a former heavyweight boxing champion who had his title revoked for getting into street fights and nearly killing a guy. He's here to reclaim his lost glory. He can punch tornadoes, that's about it. He's also the most forgettable character in the game. I praise this game for not just ripping off the Street Fighter 2 cast like so many did back then, but Michael is the exception. He seems like an attempt at capturing the success of Balrog, but it didn't work out. He has even worse than Richard though. Michael has never appeared again as a fighter and has only had a handful of cameos. I get why, but I do hope he can be given a second chance to prove himself someday. Maybe King of Fighters 15? That's my inexplicable liking of obscure fighting game characters again. His stage's music did also get into Smash though. His stage is a beach in one of those stages that only has one lane. Now I'd like to bring up one of my favourite touches. The rounds take place at a different time of day. Round 1 is during the day, round 2 is during the evening, and if you get to round 3, it's at night. Every couple of matches is a bonus arm wrestling minigame where you mash the punch button to win. It's exhausting and not worth it. The second one was a nightmare and the third I never beat. I don't care for it. The third choice is Tung Fu Roo, the man who taught both Jeff and Geese. The reason Geese killed Jeff is out of jealousy, as he found out Tung wanted Jeff to be his only successor because Geese was a power-hungry knobhead. He's just here, I guess, for revenge? Or to test Terry? I don't think it said. Tung starts off looking like the standard elderly master you see in most fighting games, like a Shundi or Wang Jinrei or Genfu. But what sets him apart is his Koreishin. After losing a certain amount of health, he hulks out and goes apeshit, spinning around the stage, plowing through everyone with his massive fists and shooting out huge fireballs. This doesn't last forever, so if you can survive that assault, you can take him down. Tung is very clearly a tribute to the Muten Roshi from Dragon Ball. At least I think he is. Has anyone involved with his creation actually said? Regardless, I've always liked Tung from a later appearance, so it's nice to see his origins as a fighter, even if his style hasn't reached its full potential yet. His stage is my least favourite though, because of the rain that starts in the second round. It looks awful and it's very distracting. The only stage change in the game I don't like. The last of the initial challenges is Duck King. He doesn't seem to have much of a story in this game. He lost to Terry in a Street Fight once and developed his breakdancing style. Duck King gave me the hardest time at the first 4. His cannonball seems slow and easy to block at first, but he always gets you while jumping or using a special move. Duck King's another character I liked from a later game. I had to choose him first back then based on the name, but here there's not much to say about him. I'm interested in seeing his later appearances to see just when he fully became the character I like. Between all these fights we have cutaways to Geese who gets more and more pissed that you're progressing through the tournament. After the first 4 fighters we move on to Geese's subordinates, starting with Hua Jai. He's a former Muay Thai champion defeated by Joe, which he's very bitter over, and he's been trained to overcome Joe by becoming more brutal. Part of that training involves going out and beating thugs to death. He started working for Geese after seeing his strength. In the middle of a round he'll down a power drink which makes him stronger and redder. He also has his Dragon Kick, which he came up to counter Joe's Tiger Kick. He's faster when used after a power drink, does insane damage even when blocking. Hua Jai closely resembles another Street Fighter character, this time Adon from the original, both being angry brutal Muay Thai fighters. I don't mind this as much as Michael with Balrog because both characters are from the same developer, so he feels more like a spiritual successor to Adon than a copycat. I like him more than Adon anyway, because he didn't piss me off like Adon did in Street Fighter 1. That said, he's not very interesting, and it looks like SNK agrees since his only other appearance as a fighter was 2 decades later. The second of Geese's henchmen is Raiden, or Ridden as his name is spelled in the cutscene prior. Raiden's a professional wrestler who was ruthless and attained in the nickname the Out of Control Giant. He's huge and he hurts. His chokehold is insane and his fire spit is hard to deal with, he likes to trap you in the corner with it. He's my favourite of Geese's henchmen. I had trouble with him, but the big guys in fighting games are always the most satisfying to hit. His stage is this amusement park with some great music, and something I love is that you can see it in the background of Michael's stage. The little touches like that connect the stage together and make Southtown feel like a much more convincing setting. Being fun to fight alone puts Raiden above the final challenger, Billy Khan. Billy and his sister Lily were orphans living in London until Geese just happened to see them on a business trip and adopted them. He's Geese's right hand man and probably the only one of the 3 henchmen who's actually loyal to Geese. He's also the reigning champion of the King of Fighters tournament. Also, how many of us thought his surname was pronounced Kane?
Billy Khan!
I did until I played this. Billy's design got better in later games, but here the dungarees and nothing else look isn't that great looking. As to Billy in gameplay, I hate him. He has great range with his bow, and then there's a move where he throws it and stands there invulnerable until he gets a new one. In the end, I found the only way to beat him was to block in the corner and crouch kick him to death, and that's just not fun. Ganging up on him in 2-player is fun though, but that's the last fight in 2-player, you can only face the final boss alone. After beating Billy, you're declared champion, but don't have long to celebrate before you're kidnapped and brought before Geese himself. The weird thing about these cutscenes is they don't specify who is talking at any point, so when you get this shot of Geese staring down at you followed by "Holy cow," I thought it was Geese himself saying that and I laughed. So, final boss, Geese. He's a monster. SNK are notorious for the bosses in their fighting games being cheap bastards, and Geese is the original, and thanks to disabling the co-op, there's no ganging up on him. He's up there with Street Fighter 1 Sagat in terms of nightmare bosses. He's fast, he's strong, and his special moves are devastating. There's his Reppuken, basically Terry's power wave if it was good. Not only is it fast, but it takes a third of your health and he likes to throw out a few at a time. One can even catch you in the middle of getting up, leaving you with no way to defend. But at least you can jump over it, and if you block the first and jump over the second, you'll probably get a hit in. What truly makes Geese a threat is his counter. He can block any of your physical attacks and follow it up by slamming you into the ground. This also takes off a third of your health. Think you've got him jumping over his Reppuken? No, counter. Think you're finally going to get that last hit in and finish him off? No, counter. Not even doing an attack? Tough, he can counter nothing as well. Thanks to this, it took me over 2 hours to beat this bastard with Terry, and I got pissed off a lot. All those times I got trapped in a corner while he just destroyed me. Also, if you end up on another row, don't bother trying to jump kick him on your way back, he'll win. There were so many times I was just a hit or 2 away from winning, but he'd come back and tear through me. And when that happens, it hurts. Despite all this, as a character, I like Geese. Him and his moves are just cool, when you're not the one getting your ass kicked anyway. I also like his stage at the top of this tower with all the statues. Geese is very into Japanese culture and it shows. The nighttime version with lightning looks especially good. He also has a unique scene for if you lose to him. It kicks you off the top of the tower and the countdown shows you falling to your death. He also has the best theme music in the game. But after 2 hours, I finally did it. I finally beat the fucker. And after all that struggling, I beat him on my first try as Andy. Joe took longer than that, but not as long as Terry. You pay back Geese by kicking him from the top of the building and watching him fall. It is then said he died in the hospital 3 hours later on June 8th, 1918? We kicked him 73 years into the past? Well, that's supposed to be the day you're playing the game then, but I guess the developers didn't take the 2000s into account and the game went with what made the most sense to it. The next screen is just the character you beat Geese with standing on a cliff and the screen says, "The prologue of the newborn legend," before the credits roll and you're shown how well you did against each fighter. Jesus, my Terry playthrough was abysmal. I had so many losses against Geese it wrapped around and started at 1 again. Fatal Fury is an enjoyable game. It's not great, but it's better than a lot of other first installments of fighting game series. It has its control issues and free character doesn't leave a lot of replay value, but it looks good and sounds great. I did enjoy myself, except for Billy and Geese, and I hope its sequels improve its gun aspects whenever I get to them.